Come on. Early, I think it was this year, Joe Biden comes out and makes this argument that the height of segregation or the height of civility in politics, it talks about civility in politics, but uses his relationship with essentially out and out racists in order to do so. This is tone deaf from the standpoint that the Democratic Party has a large contingent of African Americans. I mean, blacks vote like 90% Democrat on just a regular basis. And so for a person to come in and use out and out racist people who hate our guts and is not unclear on that point and use that as terms of civility, that is tone deaf. On a secondary point, it's politically ridiculous to do so. You can use something else in order to make that argument. Tulsi Gabbard comes out and backs Joe Biden in that particular argument. Now, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, some of the other people hit Joe Biden for that particular point, but Tulsi Gabbard backs Biden. Now, these are people who hate her guts. When Tulsi Gabbard first announced her presidency, she was attacked and vilified by essentially all corners of the Democratic establishment, going from the indie, quote unquote, side, like Sam Cedar, he's not indie at all, but the Sam Cedars of the world, all the way to the Rachel Maddows or the, let's say, MSNBCs of the world. Putin, puppet, Assad, toady. And ultimately, a lot of this came down because she stepped down in order to support Sanders, getting this nasty letter from Clintonites, and ultimately being vilified and attacked for what took place back in 2016, essentially taking out vendettas of sorts. But also foreign policy. Her foreign policy runs kilter to the established narrative of things. They attacked her relentlessly. They hate her guts. They hate her guts. And yet she's coming out and backs Joe Biden in this tone-deaf argument about how racist and him are the picture in the dictionary as a reference of civility. Obama came out today, or yesterday, maybe a couple days ago, with a statement attacking lefties. I mean, ultimately, he made this argument against quote-unquote woke culture. And in making that argument against woke culture, got along this thing of compromise and purity. Now, the catch here is, there is no such thing as purity from the standpoint of absolute. People have various political dispositions. When centrists are talking about purity, they're talking about essentially lefties compromising and going with their particular view of the world. I can guarantee you that lefties would prefer them to compromise and fold into our idea of the world, seeing as they lost everything, 1,100 seats, House, Senate, Supreme Court. They lost it all. All legitimacy went out the window with that last election with Hillary Clinton. Because of such, you've seen a resurgence of a real left. Purity in this context is no absolute. Each political disposition is going to have things that they revolve around. And within the context of their political disposition, there is purity, but not in the sense of an absolute. I hope you get my point. A Green Party member is not going to have the same political disposition of somebody who's a socialist or somebody who's a Democrat or somebody who's a Republican or a capitalist or whatever else. Purity in the context of whatever their idea is, but not in the grand scheme of things as an absolute. Obama's argument here is somewhat of a fig leaf. There's the overt and there's the sublime. In an overt sense, he's attacking the quote-unquote woke culture because they believe in big things. And in real terms, the very persistence or the very act of being woke, the very policy positions that people like me push for, repudiates the thing that came before it. Meaning what he's talking about and the thing that is burning in him when he's making this statement about quote-unquote woke culture and purity and everything else, he is talking about himself. He's talking about his legacy. I would imagine it burns if this contingent of the left that starts to arise within and without the Democratic Party takes a tenor and a disposition that is an outright repudiation and persistent critique of the Obama administration by its own existence. Meaning the ideology itself is an outright critique of the Obama administration. When Obama is coming out here and making this thing about purity and wokeness and all of this other stuff, it is his legacy that he is defending. Think about it for the moment. Medicare for all and the existence of such, pushing for such a big idea, gets across that Obamacare was not up to snuff and was found lacking in regards in the way that it was weighed. I mean, after all, it left 20 million people off, despite the fact that they kept screaming that it was universal health care. Expansion of Social Security, pot legalization. Across the board, one transformational item after the next gets across how diminutive, how small, lack of will and imagination, or for that matter, intent, despite screaming hope and change. The very existence of big ideas gets across how small Obama's presidency was. Diminutive. Obama, I would argue, defending his legacy, comes out and says this.
You know, this idea of purity and you're never compromised and you're always politically woke and all that stuff, you should get over that quickly. The world is messy. There are ambiguities. People who do really good stuff have flaws.
Nobody said the contrary to any of that. Who made the argument that people don't have flaws? Who made the argument that the world wasn't messy and ambiguous? Who made the argument? Now, I've often said that ideology is a poor substitute for reality. I say that because it's true. Whatever your ideology is, reality doesn't care one iota. And your environment presents you with all sorts of potentialities that may lean into an ideology that's beneficial, or it may not. Look at the world to which you are left with. This man left 95% of the gains to the top 1%. This man let homeowners go bust while setting himself on fire for the bankers. Not to mention the wars, the hundreds of thousands of deaths that are on his head. The drone bombings. He dropped 20,000 bombs in the last year that he was in office. The secret wars, the killings, all of these things that are part of this particular presidency that are being critiqued by what is coming after it from the standpoint of a hegemonic shift on the left. And I would imagine if you were watching that on TV and they're talking about Medicare for all and your Obamacare wasn't up to snuff, when they're talking about an expansion of Social Security, when you were talking about cutting it, when you're talking about increasing taxes, dramatically so, when you enshrine a tax cut, meaning enshrine Bush tax cuts into law, across the board, its very existence of big ideas, its very existence of somebody like Sanders gets across the failures, the lack of imagination, the lack of will. And I imagine that if you're sitting at home in your flip-flops with Michelle Obama, that it burns. It burns. Gabbard comes out, nobody asked her. In a nutshell, Obama is saying we need a little more aloha spirit, being respectful and caring to one another, not being so quick to judge, not seeing everything as black and white. I hope you'll join me in bringing the spirit of aloha to the White House. First, the aloha thing is stupid. I'm sorry, it is. I hate it. I can't stand it. Every time she says it, I can't stand it. It seems fake to me. On the second point, you heard the video for yourself. Obama is not talking about an aloha spirit. Obama is essentially talking about compromising and the left compromising. When centrists use that term purity, they are using it in the context of somebody else that is out of kilter with their own ideology. And wanting that person, using it as a smear, you're purist. You're sticking to your particular position. That's the term, and that's the way that term is typically used. I'm making the point that it's a straw man and has nothing to do but aloha, nor it has anything to do with being respectful or caring to one another. I have no idea what Gabbard is talking about. None. Not being so quick to judge, not seeing everything as black and white. I don't know what Gabbard is talking about. And coming out and backing Obama in this, when he was part of these quote-unquote regime change wars that were responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands, is this the guy that you really want to back and throw yourself on a pillar for? The Democrats hate your guts. This is not going to make them hate you any less, I guarantee you. And if you fully believe this, then I don't know the video you watched. Let's watch it again. Let's hear Obama's aloha.
You know, this idea of purity.
He's going to get to this notion of purity and so forth. I'm just saying, the purity argument. Here we go.
And you're never compromised, and you're always politically woke and all that stuff. You should get over that quickly. The world is messy. There are ambiguities. People who do really good stuff have flaws. Like if I tweet or hashtag about how you didn't do something right or used the wrong verb, or then I can sit back and feel pretty good about myself because, man, you see how woke I was? I called you out.
Do you honestly believe that that's what woke means? Do you honestly believe that what he just told you, that somebody calling somebody out on Twitter because they didn't use the right verb or something, that that's what woke means? This is a disingenuous straw man through and through. But the disingenuous straw man through and through was essentially a defense of his own legacy. There's a little bit more. Let's hear him out.
I'm going to get on TV, watch my show, watch Grownish. You know, that's not activism. That's not bringing about change.
That's not bringing about change. And he'd know he's the hope and change guy. What of that is Tulsi Gabbard talking about? We need a little more aloha spirit. Is that what you got from that? Being respectful and caring for one another? Is that what you got from that? Not being so quick to judge, not seeing everything as black and white. I hope you join me in bringing the spirit of aloha to the White House. I have no idea what she's talking about. I have no idea. And Obama, if we're being honest, should be indicted. She herself came out and said that Obama was responsible for these regime change wars in Syria, not to mention the destruction of Libya. She knows better than anybody else hundreds of thousands of deaths on his head. And he's coming out here, for all intents and purposes, attacking the left and the perspective and the growing empowerment of the left, seeing as the right wing of the Democratic Party has utterly, entirely, outright failed. Why are you throwing yourself on the pillar for that? I don't get it. I don't get it. I'll leave it. Like, share, subscribe. Captain Power, he's trying to justify his own compromises with capitalism and world bombings. Yes, that's exactly what it is. His policy, whatever his policies were, and the way he operated his policies, ended up with 95% of the income gains going to the top 1%. This is a president that screamed hope and change. Citigroup essentially picked his cabinet. No bankers went to prison. And wars, deaths, outright terrors in all of these various countries. And now he's getting on stage and saying, you people out there that don't agree with me, that have a political philosophy that is not going to give 95% of the income to the top 1%, that is not going to cut taxes, that is not going to have this notion that markets are the greatest thing on the planet, that is not going to keep health insurance companies in the mix in regards to trying to provide health care, that will expand Social Security, that will get rid of college debt. You people who believe big things, the very fact that you believe those big things is a criticism of my little things. Deaden your expectations. Compromise. Obama ran his elections, or ran his party, essentially working from the 50-yard line of the other team. And he is now giving advice on how to do policy. No thanks. And I will put to you, the Gabbard should not be throwing herself out here for Obama, especially in an unhinged tweet that makes no sense in the context of what he actually said. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.